Hello everyone, welcome to lesson number 8 of Beginner CPP's continuing program on learning C++. Wow, this is a really bad intro. And today we are going to be talking about what is called hard debugging. Let me talk about what hard debugging is and why it is easily the most important thing in all of programming that every single college student I help on a day-to-day basis has no idea how to do. And I look forward to sending them to this video in mass. So basically, in a problem like this, the water gets really muddy really fast when we don't have an understanding of what's going on. And we can use an output like this to kind of see what's going on. We can use that soft debugging skills. But when we get a lot more variables in play, and eventually we're going to get into arrays, which are containers that hold multiple variables of the same type, once we get into big complex programs like that, the odds of us being able to output everything that we want to see in a simple cout, I mean, it becomes too much. So there is another way. I've commented out this cout, and I'm actually going to leave this with the errors intact. So I can show you guys how you can track down a bug like that in your own program. So when we go here to local Windows debugger, it runs our program, right? We run this, we go, okay, cool. And we have 5,000 was our thing, and they make this 432, which is clearly that 8% that we don't want them to be getting at 5,000, but we don't know why it's happening. And so what we can do is we can add in what's called a breakpoint right here. So we come down, we go to insert breakpoint, and it puts a little red dot next to the line where our breakpoint is. And to disable it, we can right-click that dot and hit delete breakpoint. Or we can disable it if we want to re-enable it later. Apparently with Control F9 we can toggle it more quickly. I probably will never remember that. But anyways, when we run the debugger now, it's going to ask us to enter the salesperson's totals. So we wanted to do 5,000, right? So when we do that, it it stops and it brings us back to our code. So we see that there's no error list. So let's switch to this locals window. This might be different in older versions of Visual Studio, but there usually is some kind of a variables video there. And we can see our variables. We have pay, which is of type double, commission, which is of type double, as well as sales, type double. And in this case, we have 5,000 and all these empty zero spots that we don't see when we enter in the number, but that's the precision of a double. And now we have these things right here. It says up at the top. So there's show next statement, there's step over, step out, step into. We'll get into step into and step out later, but those are how we're going to go into functions later. And what we're going to do is we're going to use step over to see when this statement becomes true. So right now we're on line number 22. That's what this little yellow arrow is indicating, is where we are in our code, where our code stopped, and that's at the breakpoint. So when we step over, we can see that it has skipped this if statement. It didn't go into it. And we can see the same thing here. When we go, okay, is it greater than 5,000? Well, no, it's not. It's equal to 5,000. So we do step over again, and it skips it, and it skips it, and it skips it, and it skips it. And then suddenly we're inside of this else statement. And this shows us the next statement that's going to be executed. So when we execute this statement, we hit step over, and all of a sudden our commission is equal to that 0.8 that we had talked about before. And then we set our pay right there. We hit step over again, so our pay is now equal to 400. And that explains how we're getting these variables. That it shows you where everything's being set. And we hit step over a couple more times. We come back into this after we stepped over that C out. It output the value for us. Now we're right up to that system.pause, and we hit the step over again, and it does the system.pause, tells us to hit a key. We hit a key. We hit step over one last time or two last times, and it brings us to the return. We hit a step over, and it will eventually bring us back to our stuff, or we can just close that window and end up back at our program. So our program has executed and exited properly. Alternatively, once you do get to that point, you can either just close your window or you can hit continue at the top and it will close more gracefully than that. So yeah, that being said, that's how you guys can kind of get a more in-depth look at what's going on in your programs. When you get into functions, when you get to a function, you hit the step into button and it brings you inside that function. And you get to see every action that's being taken on your variables and every time it changes and how every if statement pans out. So this is a very powerful tool. And the later in your program you set this breakpoint, the later you can kind of start monitoring it. So if I don't care what happens here and I only care about, how's this pay getting set, I can then set the breakpoint right here, and so that's how you use breakpoints and how you use the built-in debugger and the locals tab in your output to get a better idea of what your local variables are being set to, how things are being handled, what's happening inside of your program. Um, so yeah, with that being said, I want you guys to really, really, really study the hell out of this video and go back and try to create another problem. If you didn't already do the homework, use this to solve that homework. And if you did already do that homework, make yourself another one. Make yourself another program where you get really complicated with if statements to the point where you're confused about where your brackets are matching up, where statements are being executed and why they're being executed. And once you get to that point where you're confused, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to use the debugger to figure out what happened. All right, so with that being said, guys, this is going to wrap it up. This is a short little episode, but it's probably honestly the most important episode of Beginner C++ that I will ever make. If you debug well, you will get a career. I'm not exaggerating. If you can figure out what's wrong in code, even if you don't know how to fix it, if you can figure out why it's not working right, you will be a goddamn hero, legend, mentor in no time. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Like, share, favorite, pass it along, and if you have any questions, toss them up over at the forums. See you next time.